Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Being a night shift nurse at the local hospital makes finding a quiet place to live really hard. After months of searching, I finally found this perfect little apartment complex with just 4 units. It was exactly what I needed: peaceful, affordable, and close enough to work that I could actually get some decent sleep between shifts. The landlord seemed like a nice guy when I signed the lease. He was professional, answered all my questions, and even mentioned that he lived out of state but had reliable maintenance people if anything went wrong. For the first month, everything was perfect. I could finally sleep during the day without neighbors blasting music or kids screaming in the hallways. The shared courtyard was beautiful with these old brick paths and mature trees. I even bought some flower pots to brighten up my little section of the space. Then she showed up. At first, I figured she was just a new tenant or maybe a cleaning service. I come home from work and noticed someone had been watering the plants in the courtyard. Not a big deal, right? Actually, kind of nice that someone was taking care of the place. But then weird things started happening. I go to do my laundry and find the laundry room door wide open, with this woman inside folding clothes that clearly weren't hers. She'd wave at me like we were old friends and keep doing whatever she was doing. I'm not confrontational by nature, especially when I'm exhausted from a 12-hour shift, so I just did my laundry and left. Then came the parking situation. I have this old Honda that's nothing special, but it gets me to work reliably. I always park in the same spot, which isn't even a sign but just seemed logical since it's right by my door. One morning, I'm dragging myself inside after a particularly brutal shift, and this woman approaches me. She told me I should back into my parking spot instead of pulling him forward. She said it would be better for traffic flow and look more professional. I honestly thought she was joking. I mean, who gives parking advice to strangers at 7 in the morning? But she just stood there waiting for me to respond like she'd made some reasonable request. I thanked her for the tip and figured that would be the end of it. The next week, I'm in my kitchen making breakfast before my shift when I hear my screen door open. Now, I keep that door locked specifically because the courtyard is shared space, but I hear footsteps on my little patio. I look out and see the same woman rearranging my flower pots, not moving them slightly, actually picking them up and relocating them to completely different spots. I go outside, still in my pajamas, trying to figure out what's happening. I asked her what she was doing, and she casually explained that she was the landlord's sister. She said she had helped him decorate the place originally and that my flower pots didn't look good where I had them. She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Meanwhile, she's literally redesigning my personal space without asking. I told her I appreciated that, but since I rented this unit, I prefer if she didn't move my stuff without asking first. That's when she hit me with a line that made my blood boil. She said I was just a tenant, but she was family. The way she emphasized just a tenant made me feel like some kind of second-class citizen who didn't deserve basic respect. But I'm not good with confrontation, especially when I'm tired. So I just moved my pots back after she left. The following week, she knocks on my door at 3 in the afternoon. I work nights, so this is like someone waking you up at 3 in the morning. I stumbled to the door in my sleep clothes, thinking it must be an emergency. She asked me for a big favor. She wanted to know if I would be willing to move out early, maybe next month. When I asked what she meant, she explained that her son was starting over after a really bad breakup, and that this place would be perfect for him. She said he needed a fresh start. I'm standing there barely awake, trying to process what she's saying. This woman wants me to break my lease and move out so her son can have my apartment. I told her I had a signed lease and had been there for 2 months. She said she knew that, but family was family, and she was sure we could work something out with her brother. That's when I lost it. The flower pots, the parking advice, the laundry room intrusions, it all came flooding back, and I was done being polite. I told her she needed to leave immediately. She said there was no need to be rude about it, but I repeated that she needed to leave. I shut the door and immediately called the landlord. I wasn't even sure if she was telling the truth about being his sister, but I was done dealing with her nonsense. The landlord picked up on the second ring. I told him I was his tenant in Unit 3 and that I needed to talk to him about his sister. He asked what about her, and I explained that she'd been coming onto the property, moving my belongings, and now asking me to break my lease so her son could have my apartment. There was a long pause. He asked if I was serious, and I said I was completely serious. He sounded genuinely horrified, which was actually reassuring. At least I wasn't dealing with a landlord who was in on whatever this was. He apologized and said she had absolutely no authority to do any of that. He said she wasn't even supposed to be on the property without giving notice. I asked him about this, and he said he was going to call her right away to put a stop to it. He also said he was changing the lock on the courtyard gate the next day. I was confused and asked if there was supposed to be a lock on the courtyard gate. He said there was supposed to be, and she must have made herself a copy of the key. The next day, a locksmith showed up and changed the lock. The landlord called me personally to apologize again and to make sure I knew that his sister had been banned from the property entirely. I haven't seen her since, but I did hear through one of the other tenants that she threw a fit when she couldn't get into the courtyard anymore. Apparently, she called her brother screaming about how ungrateful tenants were ruining the family business. The landlord sent me a gift card to apologize for the trouble. I've been living here peacefully for 2 months now, and it's exactly what I hoped for when I signed the lease. Some people really think being related to someone in charge gives them the right to act however they want, but apparently even family has limits. After what happened last weekend, I need to get this off my chest. My mom remarried 2 years ago to this guy who seemed decent enough at first. They dated for a year before getting married, and during that time he was always trying to impress her and our family. He'd bring flowers, remember little details about conversations, and made a real effort to fit in. My mom deserves happiness. She raised my brother and me as a single parent after our dad passed away when I was 15. She worked 2 jobs to keep us fed and housed, never complained, and always put us first. When she met her current husband at work, she was glowing again for the first time in years. He worked in the same office building as her, just a few floors up in accounting. The guy has always been busy with work, sure, but that's not unusual. My mom understood that when she married him. What I didn't expect was how he'd use that as an excuse for everything once they were married. Suddenly, being busy at work became his get-out-of-jail-free card for forgetting anniversaries, missing family dinners, and apparently, birthdays. My brother and I have always made a big deal about Mom's birthday. It's the one day of the year we really go all out to show her how much we appreciate everything she's done for us. This year I spent weeks planning what to get her. She's obsessed with this actress who's been in a bunch of period dramas, and I found out they're making a new series based on a novel. The show doesn't come out until next year, but I managed to find a first edition of the book online. It wasn't cheap, but seeing Mom's face light up would be worth every penny. My brother went a different route. He knows Mom has been getting into collecting these little figurines from Pop Mart. She has this whole shelf dedicated to them now, and she's always showing us the new ones she's found. He spent hours researching which ones she didn't have yet and finally tracked down this limited edition one that had been sold out everywhere. We planned to go over to their house together on Sunday afternoon. Mom had mentioned she wanted to keep it low-key this year, just family dinner and cake. We figured we'd surprise her with our gifts, spend the afternoon together, and maybe watch one of her favorite movies. When we arrived, Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked so happy to see us, giving us both huge hugs and asking about our weeks. Her husband was in the living room watching football, barely looked up when we walked in. Mom noticed the wrapped gifts in our hands right away. We'd coordinated to wrap them in her favorite colors. She told us we didn't have to bring anything, but we both laughed and said it was her birthday. Of course, we brought presents. My brother added that we'd been planning these for weeks. That's when her husband finally looked over from the couch. I saw his face change from disinterested to confused, to something like panic. He asked what day it was, and when Mom told him it was her birthday, the silence that followed was deafening. My brother and I exchanged looks. Even Mom's smile faltered a bit. He jumped up from the couch, running his hands through his hair, saying he had completely forgotten. But instead of apologizing profusely or rushing out to get something, he turned to my brother and me with an annoyed expression. He said we should have reminded him because we knew how busy he'd been at work lately. My brother's mouth actually fell open. I asked him if he was serious, that it was his wife's birthday. He got defensive, saying he knew that, but things slip his mind when he's dealing with 3 different projects and working 60-hour weeks. He said my brother and I talked to each other about these things, and a heads up would have been nice. My brother told him it was the same date every year, and we didn't think we needed to put it on his calendar. Mom was standing there looking mortified, trying to smooth things over like she always does. She said it was okay, really, that she didn't need anything, and having everyone there was enough. But I could see the hurt in her eyes. This was the woman who never forgot anyone's birthday, who sent cards to distant relatives and co-workers' kids. The woman who had celebrated this man's birthday just 3 months ago with a surprise party she spent weeks organizing. He kept going, saying he couldn't be expected to remember everything. He claimed he was carrying the financial burden of the household while she worked part-time, and the least she could do was help him keep track of important dates. That's when I lost it. I asked him if he was seriously blaming Mom for him forgetting her birthday. I reminded him that she worked part-time because he had said he wanted her to cut back her hours so she could take care of the house more. Mom tried to stop the fight, saying it was fine, but my brother said no, it wasn't fine, and that the whole situation was ridiculous. The husband was getting more defensive by the minute. He said he didn't need parenting advice from a couple of kids who didn't understand what it was like to support a family. My brother shot back that we weren't kids, that he was 24 with his own apartment, and I was 26 with a mortgage. I added that we both remembered Mom's birthday without anyone reminding us, just like we had every year since we were old enough to understand what birthdays were. The tension in the room was thick. Mom was clearly uncomfortable, but I wasn't about to let this slide. He said fine, if we wanted to make this a big deal, he'd go get something right now. Mom begged him not to, saying they should just have dinner, but he was already grabbing his keys. He said he'd be back in 20 minutes, and maybe next time we could give him a heads up so he didn't have to scramble like this. He slammed the door on his way out. The 3 of us stood there in stunned silence. Mom apologized, but I told her she had nothing to apologize for, that his behavior was completely out of line. My brother agreed, asking what kind of husband blames his wife for him forgetting her birthday. We spent the next hour talking while Mom finished cooking. She tried to defend him, saying work had been really stressful lately, but I could tell she was hurt. My brother and I decided not to push it further, but we made a mental note to keep a closer eye on how he treated her. He came back with a bouquet of grocery store flowers and a generic card that still had the price tag on it. He handed them to Mom without much ceremony, wishing her a happy birthday. Mom thanked him, but the damage was done. The rest of the evening was awkward, with him sulking and the rest of us trying to salvage the celebration. When we gave Mom our gifts, her reaction was everything I'd hoped for. She practically squealed when she saw the book, and she got teary-eyed over the figurine. For a moment, she looked genuinely happy again. She told us we were the best and thanked us so much. But I caught her husband rolling his eyes at our gifts, probably thinking we were showing off or making him look bad. The final straw came when we were having cake. Mom had made it herself, a beautiful chocolate layer cake with buttercream frosting. Her husband asked if she remembered to get candles, and when she said she forgot because she was so focused on the cake itself, he complained that it was another thing they had to remember. My brother asked him what was wrong with him, and he asked what my brother meant. I pointed out that she had made the entire dinner, baked a cake from scratch, and he was complaining about candles. He said he was just saying that if they were going to do this right, they should do it right. That's when my brother stood up. He said we were leaving and that Mom was welcome to come with us. He said we'd take her somewhere that actually appreciated her. Mom looked torn, but after a moment, she said that actually sounded nice. We ended up at Mom's favorite restaurant, just the 3 of us. She was quiet at first, but gradually started opening up about how lonely she'd been feeling, and how nothing she did seemed to be good enough anymore. Her husband called while we were at dinner, demanding to know when she was coming home because He was hungry and there were dirty dishes in the sink. Mom looked at the phone, then at us, and turned it off. She said she thought she needed to have a serious conversation with him when she got home. 2 weeks later, she filed for divorce. Turns out, forgetting her birthday was just the tip of the iceberg. She's been staying with my brother while she looks for her own place. And honestly, I haven't seen her this happy in months. Her ex-husband had the nerve to call me last week, asking if I could talk some sense into her and explain that marriage requires compromise. I told him he was right about compromise, but that it needs to go both ways. I'm a single mom working 2 jobs to make ends meet. My daughter is 9 years old, and she's basically my whole world. Her dad isn't in the picture, so it's just been the two of us for the past 6 years. I work as a nurse during the week and pick up shifts at a local restaurant on weekends. Money's always tight, but we make it work. Last Saturday was supposed to be our special day together. I had finally saved enough to take her shopping for some new clothes since she's been growing out of everything. We were at the big mall across town because they had better deals than the stores near us. My daughter was trying on some shoes at one of those athletic stores when this woman approached us. She was maybe in her 40s, well dressed, with this fake smile that immediately made me uncomfortable. She had a teenage girl with her, probably around 15 or 16. The woman complimented my daughter, saying she was beautiful. I thanked her politely but kept things short because something felt off about her. My daughter looked up from the shoes she was trying on and smiled politely. Then the woman asked how old my daughter was. I told her she was 9 years old. The woman said it was the perfect age and mentioned that her daughter had been wanting a little sister for so long. She turned to the teenager and asked if that was right. The teenager just nodded, but she looked uncomfortable too. I was starting to get really weird vibes from this whole interaction. The woman then said she'd been thinking about adopting and asked if maybe we could work something out. I asked her what she meant. She told me that I was obviously struggling financially. She said she could see it in my clothes and shoes. Then she had the nerve to say that my little angel deserved better than what I could provide. I was shocked and asked her who she thought she was. She said she was someone who could give my daughter the life she deserved. She went on about private school, nice clothes, and a big house. She explained that she couldn't have any more children herself, and her daughter really needed a younger sister. My daughter had stopped trying on shoes and was now hiding behind me. I could feel her gripping my arm. I told the woman we were done and started to walk away with my daughter, but this woman wasn't giving up. She called after us, saying I was being selfish and that I should think about what was best for my daughter. I turned around to face her, trying to keep my voice calm for my daughter's sake. I told her that what was best for my daughter was being with her mother, and I asked her to please leave us alone. The woman said fine, if I wouldn't see reason, she'd have to take matters into her own hands. Before I knew what was happening, she lunged forward and grabbed my daughter's wrist, trying to pull her away from me. My daughter screamed for help. I yelled at the woman to let go of her right now. I grabbed my daughter's other arm, and we were in this horrible tug-of-war. The teenage girl was just standing there looking shocked. The woman shouted that my daughter was coming with her whether I liked it or not. Somehow, she managed to break my grip and started running toward the mall exit with my daughter. I was screaming for help while chasing after them, telling anyone who would listen that someone was kidnapping my daughter. The teenage girl was running after her mom, shouting at her to stop. Other shoppers were starting to notice the commotion. The woman yelled back that my daughter needed her more than she needed me. Security guards started running toward us from different directions. One of them was speaking into his radio, reporting a code Adam in progress. He described a woman in a blue shirt with a child heading toward the west exit. I was running as fast as I could, but the woman had a head start. My daughter was crying and trying to break free from her grip. My daughter was screaming that she wanted to go back to me, begging the woman to let her go. The woman told her she'd thank her later when she saw her new room. Just before they reached the exit, one of the security guards came from the side and tackled the woman to the ground. She lost her grip on my daughter, who immediately ran back to me. I asked my daughter if she was okay and if she was hurt. She told me she was scared, and I held her tight while the security guard was trying to restrain the woman on the ground. She was thrashing around and screaming. The woman was yelling that nobody understood, that my daughter belonged with her and that she could give her everything. The teenage girl was standing over her mom looking absolutely mortified. She asked her mom what was wrong with her, telling her that you can't just take someone's kid. The woman asked her daughter if she didn't want a little sister, saying she was doing this for her. Her daughter said not like this, that this was crazy. Another security guard arrived and helped restrain the woman while she was still on the ground. She was fighting them the whole time. The woman kept shouting that this wasn't over and that my daughter needed a better mother. That's when I lost it. This woman had just tried to kidnap my daughter and was still running her mouth. I walked over to where she was being held down and kicked her right in the face. I told her to never touch my daughter again. The security guards didn't even try to stop me. I guess they figured she had it coming. The teenage girl was crying now, probably embarrassed and scared. The woman complained that her nose was broken and that I had hurt her. I told her good. Maybe next time she'd think twice before trying to steal someone's child. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. They arrested both the woman and her daughter, though I felt bad for the teenager since she clearly didn't want any part of this. The police officer told me they'd need me to come down to the station to give a statement. He said the woman was going to be charged with attempted kidnapping. I asked what would happen to her daughter. The officer said she'd probably be released to a relative since she didn't actually participate in the kidnapping attempt. When they were putting the woman in the police car, she was still yelling at me. She said I was making a mistake and that she would have been a better mother. I told her she wasn't my daughter's mother. I was. The whole thing was over in about 30 minutes, but it felt like hours. My daughter was shaken up but okay physically. We didn't end up buying any shoes that day. Later I found out that the woman had 3 previous arrests for similar incidents. Apparently she'd been going to different malls and approaching single mothers with young daughters. The police said I wasn't her first target, but hopefully I'd be her last. The teenager ended up going to live with her aunt. I actually felt sorry for her. Having a mother like that couldn't have been easy. The woman got 18 months in jail for attempted kidnapping. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was mentally ill, but the judge wasn't having it. Apparently, being unable to have more children doesn't give you the right to steal other people's kids. My daughter bounced back faster than I did. Kids are resilient like that, but I still get nervous when strangers approach us at the mall. Some people really are just that entitled, thinking they can take whatever they want just because they want it. I've been riding motorcycles for about 15 years now. Started when I was in my 20s, and it became one of my biggest passions. There's something about the freedom of the open road, the wind hitting your face, and the brotherhood you find among other riders that just can't be replicated anywhere else. Over the years, I've made quite a few friends through various motorcycle clubs and events. One guy I've known for about 8 years now, let's call him my riding buddy, and I have always gotten along great. We'd meet up at bike shows, charity rides, and local club events. He's got this dry sense of humor that usually makes me laugh, and we've shared plenty of good times talking about bikes, routes, and life in general. The thing is, I'm not exactly what you'd call tall. At 5'7", I'm definitely on the shorter side, especially in a crowd of bikers where guys tend to be pretty big. My riding buddy has always made jokes about my height, and honestly, it never really bothered me much. It was just friendly ribbing between friends, or at least that's what I thought. About 6 months ago, everything in my life changed. My wife started feeling tired all the time, losing weight without trying, and having these persistent headaches. After weeks of doctor visits and tests, we got the news that turned our world upside down. She had cancer, stage 3 aggressive, and it was going to require immediate treatment. Suddenly, motorcycle rides became the last thing on my mind. My wife needed me home for chemotherapy appointments, doctor visits, and just general support. She was scared, I was scared, and everything else took a backseat to fighting this disease together. I missed several local events and rides because I simply couldn't leave her side. Last weekend, there was a big local club event that I've been looking forward to for months. It was supposed to be a charity ride followed by a barbecue and bike show. Under normal circumstances, I would have been there bright and early with my bike polished and ready to go. But with my wife going through a particularly rough patch with her treatment, there was no way I was leaving the house. Monday morning, I was sitting in the hospital waiting room while my wife was getting blood work done when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my writing buddy. He asked me where I was at the event yesterday and wanted to know if I skipped it because they introduced a height requirement. Just another joke about how short I am. I stared at the message for a moment, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite sort out. Here I was dealing with the biggest crisis of my life, and he was making jokes about my height. I looked over at my wife, who was pale and tired from her treatment, and something inside me snapped. I typed back and told him the truth. I explained that my wife has cancer and that I'm going to have to quit riding and sell my motorcycles because if I get injured in the slightest, my wife won't have anyone to be her caretaker. I hit send and put my phone down. Part of me felt bad for being so blunt, but another part of me was angry that he'd made assumptions about why I wasn't there. The truth was, I had been seriously considering selling my bikes. The medical bills were piling up, and if something happened to me during a ride, my wife would be completely alone during the most difficult time of her life. A few minutes passed without a response. Then another few minutes. I was starting to think he wasn't going to reply at all when my phone buzzed again. He wrote back saying that maybe he should have just said he missed me at the event this morning instead of making the joke. I could practically feel the awkwardness through the text message. It was clear he had no idea what to say and was probably kicking himself for making the height joke. But honestly, his response made me even more frustrated. Instead of a genuine apology or asking about my wife's condition, he was essentially saying he wished he'd approached the conversation differently just to avoid the uncomfortable moment. I didn't respond right away. My wife came out of her appointment and we spent the rest of the day dealing with adjusting her medication and planning the next round of treatment. But the text exchange kept bothering me. This was supposed to be a friend, someone I'd known for years, and his first instinct when I didn't show up somewhere was to make a joke at my expense. That evening I decided to give him one more chance. I texted back and told him that she was getting a little bit better and thanked him for asking, even though he really hadn't asked about her condition at all. I waited for a response, hoping he'd ask more about her condition or offer some kind of support. Instead, he just said that was good to hear, and that he'd see me at the next event. That was it. No follow-up questions about her treatment, no offer to help, no acknowledgement of what we were going through. Just a casual sign-off like we'd been discussing the weather. It was in that moment that I realized this friendship had probably never been as genuine as I thought. A real friend would have checked in on me when I stopped showing up to events. A real friend wouldn't have made jokes about my absence without knowing what was going on in my life. And a real friend definitely would have shown more concern when they found out about my wife's cancer. I decided to test my theory. Over the next few weeks, I didn't reach out to him at all. I wanted to see if he'd check in on his own, maybe ask about my wife's progress or offer any kind of support. But my phone stayed silent. No texts, no calls, nothing. 3 weeks later, I saw him at a motorcycle dealership when I was getting some paperwork together to sell one of my bikes. He was looking at new models with a big smile on his face. He greeted me cheerfully and said he hadn't seen me around lately, acting like nothing had happened. I reminded him that I was still dealing with my wife's cancer treatment and asked if he remembered our conversation. He brushed it off and said that was tough, then immediately suggested I should come to the ride next weekend. He claimed it would be good for me to get out. I told him I was actually there selling my bike just like I had explained to him before. I reminded him that I couldn't risk getting injured right now because my wife needed me. But instead of understanding, he told me not to be so dramatic. He said I was a good rider and asked what the chances were that something would happen. He was actually arguing with me about my decision to prioritize my wife's health over motorcycle riding. That's when I knew this friendship was over. I looked him straight in the eye and told him the chances were about the same as him being a decent friend when I needed one. Then I walked away and never looked back. I started working at this mid-sized tech company about 4 years ago. When I began, I was fresh out of college with just a basic degree. so I took what I could get. The company wasn't exactly known for generous pay, but they promised growth opportunities. Every year we'd get these pathetic 2 to 3% raises that barely covered the cost of my morning coffee, let alone actual inflation. The thing is, I wasn't just sitting around complaining. I was busting my ass studying for my master's degree while working full-time. My boss knew this from day one. We had this understanding that once I graduated, I'd get promoted to a senior position. He made it sound like it was a done deal, always talking about when I'd finish my degree and how I'd be qualified for the next level once I had my diploma. So there I was, grinding through night classes, weekend assignments, and thesis work while still putting in 40 plus hours a week. I figured it would all pay off eventually. My boss seemed supportive, always asking about my progress and nodding approvingly when I'd mention getting good grades. Last September finally came around. I walked across that stage, got my diploma, and felt like I was finally ready to move up in the world. I waited about a week to let the excitement settle, then scheduled a meeting with my boss to discuss my promotion. Before the meeting, I did my homework. I pulled up the worker union's salary statistics for our industry and position level. The median salary for someone with my qualifications and experience was about 18% higher than what I was making. I knew the company was cheap, and I knew they just laid off about 15% of the staff in July due to budget cuts. I was lucky to survive that round because I developed some specialized skills that made me pretty much irreplaceable. I walked into his office with a printed copy of the statistics and laid it on his desk. I told him I wanted to discuss my promotion now that I'd graduated and explained that, based on these industry standards, I thought the median salary would be appropriate for my new position. My boss looked at the paper, and I swear his face went through about 5 different expressions in 10 seconds. Then he actually scoffed at me and said, "I must think I'm rich if I expected that much money." He acted like I was asking for some outrageous amount. I explained that I wasn't rich at all and was actually struggling to keep up with rent and student loans. I told him this was just a standard rate for someone with my qualifications. But then he said something that really got under my skin. He told me that if he gave me more money, I'd just spend more, like that was somehow a bad thing. I told him that what I did with my money wasn't really his concern, and that I was just asking for fair compensation based on my skills and the market rate. He kept insisting that no one at that level made that much at the company and that the statistics had to be wrong. Then he started bringing up random complaints about my work, like how I didn't respond to an email for 3 days. I had to remind him that I was off-site giving a training course that week, which he had approved himself. But then he said something that really challenged me. He told me I could go look for other jobs to see how much others were offering, and that I'd see it wasn't going to be any better out there. He seemed pretty confident that I'd come crawling back once I realized how good I had it. I told him maybe I would look around, and he actually encouraged me to do it, saying reality would hit me pretty quick. He said he'd need to negotiate with human resources and get back to me. I left that meeting feeling pretty frustrated, but his challenge about looking elsewhere had planted a seed in my mind. Over the next few months, he kept stringing me along with updates about how he was still working on it and that HR was being difficult. Meanwhile, I started quietly applying to other companies. I updated my resume, highlighting my new degree and specialized skills, and began reaching out to my network. December rolled around and my boss finally called me back into his office. He told me he had good news and that he'd fought hard for me. He said he managed to get me an 11% raise, but then came the catch. He explained that since this was such a big bump, I wouldn't be getting the usual 2 to 3% annual adjustment next year like everyone else. I asked him if that meant while everyone else got their normal raise, I'd be stuck at this level. He said that was the deal and told me to take it or leave it. I simply agreed to the deal, which seemed to surprise him. He looked confused that I accepted so easily, but I had my reasons. By this point, I was already in final interviews with several companies, including one that was basically the Google of our industry. I've been taking his advice about looking elsewhere, and boy was I getting an education. January came, and I got the call I've been hoping for. The top company in our field offered me a position with a 35% salary increase from my current pay. I was over the moon, but I decided to have a little fun with the situation. I scheduled another meeting with my boss and walked in with the same calm energy I'd had during our first conversation about my promotion. I told him I had some news to share about getting a job offer from another company. He asked what kind of offer it was, and I explained they were offering me a 35% increase over my current salary. The color drained from his face, and he started stammering and fidgeting with his pen. He suddenly started talking about how they wanted me to stay and how much they needed me. He went on about how my performance had been excellent and my development had been great. Then he said they couldn't match that exact amount because not even top management made that much at the company. I told him I understood it wasn't fair for me to earn more than everyone else and asked him to just do his best. He asked me to give him 30 minutes and not make any decisions yet. He practically ran out of his office toward the executive wing. I sat there checking my phone and trying not to laugh. About 25 minutes later, he came back looking flustered. He told me he'd spoken with upper management and that they could offer me a 30% raise. He said that was the absolute maximum they could do and seemed pretty proud of himself. I told him that was generous, but that I'd need to think about it. He seemed confused about what there was to think about, pointing out that it was almost the same as their offer. Then I delivered the line that made his face go white. I said I should probably call the other company back and see if they could do better, since he was able to increase his offer. I explained that he'd told me to shop around and see what the market would offer, so I was just being thorough. He asked in horror if I was going to use their offer to negotiate with the other company. I reminded him that he'd told me to explore my options and that I was just following his advice. The truth was, I'd already made up my mind months ago. From the moment he dismissed my reasonable request and made condescending comments about my finances, I knew I was done with this place. But watching him squirm when he realized his own advice had backfired was pretty satisfying. I called my new employer that afternoon and mentioned that my current company had tried to retain me with a counter offer. They bumped their offer up to 40% above my original salary, plus better benefits and actual respect for my professional development. 2 weeks later, I turned in my resignation. My boss tried one more time to convince me to stay, but I just smiled and told him I was taking his advice about exploring my options. I explained that he was right about one thing. I definitely learned something from looking around. I learned that I was worth a lot more than he wanted me to believe. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.